Here's a common setup for photographing artwork. You have your image flat against the wall, either with tape or magnets. Make sure it's completely flat. There's a black sheet of paper behind my print to increase contrast and absorb the light that's hitting it from both sides. Natural light is a great light source for photographing your work. Probably the most common and easy ways to light your image is photographing your work taped to a flat surface like a drawing board or wall and photographed on a bright day with the sun at your back. I've opened up my image in Adobe Photoshop, and the first thing I want to address is cropping. So I want to get rid of all the information I don't need by cropping. So first, though, I want to make sure my image is straight and square. Square meaning 90-degree angles all the way around. So I'm going to use these guidelines here by clicking and dragging from my rulers. If you don't see your rulers, you can go to View, Rulers, and have that checked. And these are going to give me a nice guide to make my paper square. It's not too bad, but we want to get that nice and straight. So I'm going to zoom in, and I want to align my paper up to this guideline. I can adjust the proportion of the paper later. I just want to get it straight. I'm going to go to Select All, and it's going to allow me to manipulate the entire image with my layer. Now that I'm at my layer, let me actually duplicate this so I keep this protected in case I make a mistake. Go to Edit, Transform, and now I can use any of these tools to help me move that sheet of paper around. I prefer the Distort because it allows me to make kind of micro shifts like this. If you see that it's a little jumpy like that, you can go into View and uncheck Snap. What that does is it allows you to move this without having it snap to your guidelines. And I'll do that for each corner. So since it's pretty straight, I only need to worry about my 4 anchor points here. And I'm just going to do my best to get it as square as possible. There's a little out there. And then I see, yep, I need to, so if it doesn't work out, I can always hit it, Edit, Transform, Distort again. And so now that I've done that, I notice that a gap is created here because my paper is warped. Distort isn't going to fix that. I need to go to Edit, Transform, and Warp. What this does is it gives me a few more anchor points to move around, including at the center and on the edge. The ones on the edge work perfectly for these corrections. So I'm going to carefully move around my artboard and adjust my image slightly. Now, whenever you make an adjustment, it usually impacts another side, so just make sure to double check all of your image. Now, if you're a hairline off, it's not a big deal, but you do want to make sure you capture your entire image. And now I'm going to apply that. And I want to turn my snap back on because I'm going to go to my rectangular marquee tool, click and drag. I'm going to click and drag from my reference line. I'm going to click and drag from one corner. As you can see, my marquee tool snaps right to those guidelines. With that all selected, I'm going to go to Image, Crop, and now I've cropped my image. Lastly, I'm going to rotate it. I'm going to go counterclockwise, and now I have my image right where I need it to be. So I've cropped it, and it's presenting really well. The next thing you're going to want to do is color correct and adjust any exposure. So I actually got a pretty good photo here. I have the print next to me, and I really just need to mess around with some of the lighting and saturation. So there's two options here. You can actually go right into image adjustments and make any corrections in these first two windows. It allows you to do basic brightness contrast shifts all the way to hue and saturation adjustments. And that's an easy, quick way. Now, photo editing is not my strong suit, so I like to be able to undo or adjust as I go. So I actually go to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, and I have the same settings as before, but now when I select it, so let me do brightness contrast, I hit OK, it's now in my layer, so I can actually adjust my image in the layer, close out, and revisit it. So say I close out and I feel like I'm good, but later on I might want to make a slight adjustment, I can always reselect. That option isn't available when you go to your adjustments panel. You have to undo or go into your history to modify that. I can toggle that adjustment back and forth and realize that that's a little too bright. So I'll go in and go reduce my brightness here. I can improve upon my contrast though, which I think is greatly needed. So let's go back to my adjustment layer. And the next thing is levels and curves. So this allows you to adjust your values. Levels is an easier way to modify. I recommend using levels over curves because it allows you to just modify your three values, your dark tones, mid-tones, and light tones. You can just move this back and forth to modify. My value is working out really well. It's just my color. So I'm going to actually skip ahead to hue and saturation, color balance, and vibrance. So these are the three color options that you can mess with. I want to remind everyone that no two images are alike. Each image is going to have different requirements, especially because lighting changes with each photo you take. Let me zoom out a little bit. So as you can see here, the saturation on the bottom is pretty rich. So I'm actually going to reduce the saturation to match my print. If I needed to modify my hue at all, I could. So I did modify it slightly because this green isn't correct in the photo. And so yeah, I feel pretty confident about that. I'm going to reopen my levels panel here. Just try to get that a little darker and boost up my mid-tones. Yeah, that's looking great. One of the more popular edits you might have is adjusting your photo filter. So if you use light that's a little too warm, you can bring in a photo filter that cools down your image. So my lighting is actually pretty good here, so if I needed to make any adjustments, it would just be ever so slight. But say you have a photo that looks really warm like this, like really warm, a lot of yellow light was being used, counteract that with your cooling filter. The cooling filter is gonna brighten that up, and you'll just have to find the right density to match it. I think that's looking pretty good. I can always toggle back and forth. If you click and hold, you can see what it looks like without any adjustment. And this is why I like having the ability to go back and see and make sure that what I'm doing is the right direction. I can always adjust, try to get those midtones. Yeah. So there we go. That's the first image. Lastly, save your image as your first name, last name, and project. I always save a Photoshop version just in case I need to make more edits. if you look here, it's actually a really big image. I'm keeping my image big for my Photoshop file, but for my submission, I need to make it smaller. So go into Image, Image Size, and preview what size. It's 32 by 44. In no way do I need it to be that big. But I also notice another thing. Since the settings on my phone are 72 dpi, the resolution is 72 dpi here. I actually want to make it 300. 300 is going to give me a good result. But when I make it 300, notice how pixelated it becomes. So actually what I'm going to do is hit resample, and you see it's now at 300 resolution, but my image size has decreased. Notice in the image it's not blurry like before. That's okay. It's still a pretty good size image, so I'm going to do that. Now save your image as a JPEG. I always save it at the highest amount. And lastly, you're going to preview your image. So as long as it's under 20 megabytes, it can be submitted. Having it under 10 is a good goal for your imagery. And yeah, so there it is. There's my image. Now I'll work on a more complicated image. As you can see here, I need to correct my edges, erase these magnets, do a little bit of lighting adjustment, and color correction. So the first thing I want to do though is crop my image, so I'm only adjusting what I need to. So I'm bringing in these guidelines by clicking and dragging. Click and drag for all four corners so we could square out the paper. Go to Edit. Let's go ahead and duplicate this so we have our original here. Go to Select All. What it does is grabs the entire image. Go to Edit, Transform, or Command T. And so Distort, Skew, Perspective, Warp, they all work. As you can see with Distort, it gets you some of the basics, but it's not going to be able to adjust all of the paper warp. As you can see, it jumps around a lot, so let's go to View and remove Snap. That's going to allow me to get more customized with my lineup here. So I'm just trying to line up those corners the best I can, and then I'll bring in my warp tool to do the rest. But it's really important that you have a square image for presentation. These are easy ways to modify an image and make it look professional. I'm going to hit Enter, Edit, Transform, Warp. And as you can see here, I can now pull these handles to get a straighter edge. So I'm going to do that all around till all my edges are even. Double check that once you've made an adjustment, it's stuck. Okay, that looks pretty good. Hit Enter. And now, using my guidelines, I'm going to go to my marquee tool with Snap turned back on. Start on one corner, click and drag. Then go to Image, Crop. I'm going to go to Image, Rotate, counterclockwise, or whatever you need. And now I have my image cropped. Next thing I want to do is get rid of these magnets. They're a bit distracting. So I'm going to open up my clone stamp tool. Now it should be in your window, your tools panel here, but if it's not, go to the miscellaneous and pull up clone stamp tool or click S. What the clone stamp tool is going to do is sample an area in your artwork that you want to clone and add to your image. So for each magnet, sample an area near it by clicking Option and click. What it does is it grabs that image and it clones it. What it does is it samples that section and will replace what you have here. Best thing to do is sample as close to your area as possible to get the same lighting. So I'll just do it right to the side. Same thing, and I'll do that all the way around till everything looks nice and even. There's no signs of those magnets. If it's not perfect, that's okay. I'm gonna modify my lighting anyways. But it does take a little bit of time and patience to get the right look. And there you go. So now I've erased any unwanted marks. I want to adjust my lighting, especially because I have a white border. Dealing with white borders is quite difficult, actually. So what I do is, this gray artboard can sometimes be misleading. So I'm actually going to increase my canvas size to see what a true white border is. So with my white in the background, I'm going to go to Image, Canvas Size, and I'm just going to increase my canvas size a few inches. And if I need to, I'll just fill my background with white. So you can see this is white and this is really uneven and cream-like. So the first thing I want to do is go into my layer, new adjustment layer, see if my photo filter will handle any of that. So as you can see, I don't want to warm it up. I actually want to cool it down and preserve some of that white. That did a pretty good job. But as you can see here, I have uneven borders in terms of light. So when it's uneven, you don't want to try messing with the levels. You can go in to your layer, new adjustment layer, and actually go to curves. So the curves allows you to select one particular value and adjust it if you need. So I can actually modify my curve to adjust. But as you can see here, it doesn't affect everything no matter what I do. So next thing would be to mess around with your dodge and burn tool. So in your tool panel here, there's the dodge, which is going to lighten an area, and burn, which is going to darken it. We're going to actually use the dodge tool here, and I want to touch on the midtones and the highlights. So let me go to highlights first. With my layer selected, as you can see here, I could easily go in and correct and lighten up this whole image. But if I accidentally touch my artwork area, it becomes a mess. So let me actually make the exposure less extreme. Increase my brush size. So as you can see here, it actually lightens up the whole area, which is doing a great job because it's not affecting my midtones. So that's one way you can do it. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Now, I really don't like, though, what it's doing here because it is bleeding over. So instead of doing that, I want to be able to be selective with what I can adjust. Now, I can either go in and lasso this area. That takes a little too long. So I'm going to use my magic wand tool here and try to select all the white space. So go here and go to select similar. As you can see, it did a pretty decent job of grabbing my border. If I needed to adjust the tolerance for it to grab more or less, I can do that right here, but I'm pretty happy with that. Now I can actually go in and lighten up just my white border. I can go in to my adjustment panel and brighten up only that section. So as you can see, that's an easy way to fix one area, like so. That's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Again, it's an easy solution. If I notice an area still needs adjustment, I can keep it selected, grab my dodge tool, make sure highlights is selected, and then just pay a little attention in that area. Now, if you got a little too bold with your adjustment, I'm going to actually go ahead and click. I'm going to hold Command and click. What it does is it selects this layer, and I'm going to create a new layer. And if I want to make it just not look so stark white, I might make a slight fill like this. Maybe a little bit more. Try to bring a little bit of a gray in there. Put it over the top of my image and hit multiply. As you can see here, I get the look of my paper again because it's not a bright white. I can always lighten it too if I need to get that, but it just becomes less stark white. So that's an easy way to adjust your image. Lastly, what I haven't done is cropped. So I need to crop my image and then mess around with any other colors. So with my layer selected, I'm just going to do a quick adjustment. Instead of going into my layer adjustment panel, I'm just going to make a quick adjustment to the saturation again. I'm going to bring my saturation down just a little bit so it's not too intense. Like that. And then I'll save my image. So as you can see here, it's good to go. That was a test image, so I might want to actually mess around and crop it to what the final image is going to look like. Like that. And this image is complete. I'll save my Photoshop file. And then for my submission, I want to make this smaller because as you can see, it's about 38 inches wide. So I'm going to go to image size. Make sure resample is not checked. I'm going to make it 300. And then if you need to, adjust your image size. So if you want to make it 9 by 12 or whatever. If you want to make it 10 inches wide, you can do that, but just know your resolution decreases the more you make it bigger. So I'll save that as a JPEG. And I'm done. I hope this helped. This was a brief tutorial on editing photos that I captured with my mobile phone camera.